was amazing. Today is Soul Survivor Sunday, and you'll be pleased to know that it wasn't just me that went to Soul Survivor. That would be pretty boring. So I'm just going to invite everybody that went to Soul Survivor just to come to the front so you can see who we're talking about. There are some people that haven't been able to make it today for whatever reason. So that means, stand up and come forward. Courtney, you were at Soul Survivor, I do believe. Emmy and Rebecca, I called you by your Sunday name. Emmy and Rebecca were also at Soul Survivor, but they're going downstairs. Rebecca, would you like to tell us anything about Soul Survivor? The weather was great. On Friday, no word of a lie, we were talking about this and we were like, right guys, Sunday's it. Have you all thought about something you want to say about Soul Survivor? Rebecca was like, I don't know what to say. I'll just tell everyone the weather was great. And she literally took all night on Friday to think about that, didn't she? So, thanks. Huh? I can't tell what she said. So we'd like to say so long, farewell to our lovely children as they go downstairs. Libby, are you going downstairs? You're going to Sunday school? See you later, alligator. Right, I'm just going to do a quick hello, my name is, because I'm sure a lot of people here know who you are. And maybe how many times you've been to Soul Survivor. Because some of you have been more than once, haven't you? So I'll start. My name is Laura. Hello. And I have been to Soul Survivor on and off for 9 years. I've slept in a field for a long time. That's a lot of hours in a field.
My name's Chloe. Hi. I went to Soul Survivor just this year.
Amazing. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Pippa, and I've been twice.
I'm Katie, and I've been twice also.
I'm Courtney and been twice.
I'm Tim and I've been once.
I'm Hannah and I've been one.
And I'm Chris and I've been once.
And we put him off for life. No more joking. Emmy stayed. I'm really sorry. PA guys, I'm really sorry.
I'm Emmy. I went once 7 years ago, and then I've been a few times since. So probably about 4 times, I think. Amazing. Yeah, Emmy was in our first batch of young people to go to Soul Survivor, wasn't she?
I'm Chris. And 8 years I've been going to Soul Survivor. Feels like a lot longer than that, but 8 years.
It's felt like a while, hasn't it? So anyway, the idea of today basically is to break the golden rule that what happens on camp stays on camp. Matthew also went to Soul Survivor. Hi, Matthew. And Matthew, it was your first time, wasn't it? We also had a couple of other people that unfortunately can't make it today. And you will see them. We're going to watch a quick video because we're going to talk about our stories, but we want to give you a little bit of context. So we're going to play a video. So hopefully this is the highlights of Soul Survivor 2014.
Safe in the Savior's hands. You were more than my words could
was a tiny little bit. There was a tiny little bit that said at the end, "We had a great time. Can't wait for 2015. Are you in?" Because we would love to take everybody again. It's amazing, as you can see. So I thought we would start with some of our favourite stories. Not necessarily our testimonies, but some of our favourite stories about maybe what happened on camp. So you're just going to have to be really brave. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of me and Chris talking. And we will think of some very embarrassing stories to share with you all. So who wants to go first with an amazing story around camp? Okay, well, I'm just going to tell you about this. You may have seen my lovely friend Chloe with duct tape on her mouth. I just want to tell you that we did not do that to her. She did that to herself. We have a little video that may explain why she was wearing duct tape. And Hannah, you were there. Pippa, you were also part of this afternoon. We had an afternoon at on camp, and we'll play the video in a second. But look very carefully in the background, because what we haven't told you yet is that Pippa ended up in hospital. She's fine, as you can see. But Pippa ended up in hospital, and a part of this afternoon, when we were having lots of fun, it was one of the best times that we had around camp. Pippa is in the background hugging the washing up bowl because she wasn't feeling very well. So just look out for that as we watch this next video. And this video definitely stars Chloe. It stars Hannah Welch as well, who can't unfortunately be here. And you what, sorry? And you walked in partway through and joined in with the rest of it. Also, you will notice that Chris was a significant part in this. Chris, the sensible youth leader on the end, had a lot to do with this afternoon. Go, Matthew, play.
This is Michael. He's 17. He used to live in America, in Oklahoma. Say hi.
Hello.
Yeah, he's from America, you see.
Howdy.
He now lives in Cambridge, which is in England, if you don't know that. He was sold to us for 17 packets of salt and vinegar crisps.
11
packets of salt and vinegar crisps from some silly people who stole him for some popcorn. We are now going to paint his face as he is our slave.
You just drive it.
Newmarket. She's not from America. Say hi, Claire. Gotta get started.
How did you come about meeting Claire?
Well, we traded Michael for Claire here so we could give her the same torture that Michael enjoyed, only he got taken off on a leash. I'm sure she will cooperate much more.
You do realise that we could trade her for another youth leader?
Yeah, that's
when
a good
you're done.
idea. We should do them all.
Sorry.
Let's just paint them all.
That is what we did. We basically, Michael, there's this thing on camp, and we did it, and it's called trading up. So you set off with something. Does somebody want to tell them about the trade up? Tim, you were very, very good at this. Tim is the man. If you've got something to trade, Tim is the man to do it. Tim, come and tell everybody what trading up was, because that will give you a concept of why we ended up with a young man in our camp.
We started off with like a different food item each, and we were in two teams. And I was with Amy and Hannah Welch, and we had a carton of apple juice, and we just had to go around and like swap them for other items that people didn't want. And then the idea was just to get as much stuff as we could. And in the end, we actually got quite a lot from it. A lot.
The guys got so much from a single carton of orange juice and one Swiss roll that I'm not going to bother shopping next year. Honestly, they doubled what we had in the store cupboard. It was quite funny. So basically, another group had gone round and had traded this young man for, I think it was popcorn. The camp that he belonged to wanted popcorn and gave the girls this man. And then they came to us, this guy. They came to us and they were like, right, we've got cake or Michael, who is willing to be a slave and do whatever you want him to do around camp. So the girls decided they wanted the guy, not the chocolate cake. And all we had to trade was 11 packets of salt and vinegar crisps that apparently nobody likes eating. Oh, well, so that's how that story came about. So, anybody else want to share another story that happened around camp?
Well, me and Chloe were on the opposite team, and we started off with tea bags. Not very interesting, and bin liners. But we came across a group of Germans, little camp, and we were trying to explain this game with my very, very, very limited German. And Chloe's... It just didn't go well at all. We spent about half an hour explaining it, and in the end they gave us a chocolate bar for, what did we stop it for?
1 loom band.
A packet of loom bands. We told them that they were the latest craze in England, and they believed us.
They were.
Well, they were, but they didn't know how to do them. So that was that story.
Great stuff. Hannah, I believe you've brought something in to show us about what else you can get up to around camp. Is this true? No? Did you bring your thing that you did in the art shed? Ah.
That nobody actually knew about. And I did draw another picture, but Chris won't let me show it. But no, this was just a picture I got during worship, and I sat down and painted it while everyone else was getting really weird. That's about it. Amazing. I don't have really much.
So,
you can pass me the microphone just to clarify the point. The other picture that Hannah did, which is the reason why I'm not showing you, is because through the lovely worship, one of the meetings, Hannah obviously got bored and her brain went to, what does Chris look like in a dress? And then she drew it. So I'm not letting you see that because it's her imagination of what I look like in a dress. So that's the reason why you're not seeing that.
okay. So, you've seen like what we got up to around camp. So obviously we were there for a long time and we were all set up around tents and stuff. But Soul Survivor itself, there's an awful lot of stuff that goes on. And maybe these guys don't know what else happens. Obviously we have fun and stuff around camp, but what else happens? So what else can you do at Soul Survivor?
There was like a lot of like the different talks that we could go to, and they were really good. And
did you go to any?
Yeah, I went to quite a few. Yeah.
Cool.
What we're saying.
Okay, it's bounced back. I'm going to ask now, serious point. Obviously, we went there, and we spent 6 days together, and we lived together, didn't we? We all stayed on camp. But the whole aim, we spent like 6 hours a day almost. The meetings were like nearly 3 hours long, the main meetings. We spent 6 hours a day worshipping God, listening to his word, receiving ministry of the Holy Spirit. I just wondered if anybody would share with the rest of the church what happened to you spiritually while you were at Soul Survivor.
I don't know if it's appropriate.
God wants me to get married. And they said that it was good to get married and that it was because of God wanted you to.
What was the whole theme of the week?
Sex and marriage.
Anybody else want to share? Maybe how, I know that some of you, it's the second year you've been, so maybe how God impacted you the first time you went, because obviously it was something.
I didn't experience much this year because I was only there for 2 days until I went home. But the year before, I experienced quite a lot, and it's still impacting and changing me today from what I experienced that year.
But you forged a lovely relationship with the washing up bowl, didn't you?
I did, yeah. And at the end of when I left on the Sunday, I think the washing up bowl had been put back to use again, so.
Come here, video. Can somebody just explain Chris's outfit?
Yes, somebody should explain.
My favourite colour is orange.
It's the T-shirt that Mike Pilavachi wears when he preaches.
Yes. Yes, my beautiful wife. She thought I should look. Stretch the cape. Yeah. Some of the things that really was brilliant for me to watch is watching the young people respond. Sometimes you look at the youngsters, they're having fun, and you're wondering what spiritual impact the whole event's actually having with them. And towards the last few nights, there was a calling for people to respond to the entire event. And I'd like to say, actually, all of our youngsters actually responded to it, which was just absolutely amazing to watch. But also to watch 5,000 young people really experience the anointing and the blessing of God on their lives, and to respond to being called out in that way was just absolutely amazing. And the relationships that were forged there, I expected a bit more tension, to be honest, between so many young people. That I think one of the camps did have a little bit of a raucous, but that was quite interesting. But our camp, for all intents and purposes, got along brilliantly, and the relationships even between the young people were strengthened. And as a leader, just to break some ice with some of the youngsters that I'd never really had any sort of real connection with, and that was just amazing as well. That's what I got out of it.
I think a good question to always ask yourself when you come away and you do stuff, and we've been doing Soul Survivor for 8-9 years now as a church, is what's the reason why we go to Soul Survivor rather than going anywhere else? I think the great answer to that, and I hope this is what the guys feel, because it's very hard to find a different place where you can find 5,000 to 6,000 young people all worshiping God at the same time. We have a few young people here, and there's some more young people downstairs. But seeing 5,000 young people all worshiping God, knowing that you're not the only ones on this journey, and that when we're talking about relationships, I'm going to go on to talk about relationships in a bit. But relationships are really difficult, and to see so many young people respond to that, I know that built me up in terms of how I deal with relationships, let alone what the young people do. And the other major reason why we go to Soul Survivor is that the level of support there is unbelievable compared to what you'd get at a non-event like that. And I know that there's quite a lot of the guys here went to the chat room this year. Last year, they spent a lot of time with the Fringe team, which are the guys kind of on the edge of meetings, which help to draw them in and help to explain some of the big questions when it's impossible to do so in such a large setting. But the chat room is open during the day and in the evening, just to talk about some of the issues that come up throughout the event. Now, I know that these guys went in initially just to ask awkward questions just because they could, because that's what our lovely young people are like. But at the same time, I know that some young people got wholly impacted by the fact that they had somebody else to talk to, which weren't us. And I love the fact that that's there, and that's no detriment to the leaders here. Having that outside person that they can speak to, and having such a big team of staff where you know that their hearts are right and you know that they are their safeguarding is brilliant. All of that kind of stuff is absolutely invaluable. And I know from a leader's point of view, and I hope that some of this stuff that I've said rings true with you guys in terms of, and that's the reason why I love Soul Survivor. It's not just because we get to hang out in a field in Stafford, because I love Stafford, but I'd think of many nicer places to go than Stafford if I wanted to just hang out in a field. It's all the other stuff that come with it. Fantastic teaching. And you know what? The main theme of the week was about relationships. And you know, and the way that they did it was absolutely straight head on. We talked throughout the week. We talked about friendships and true friendships. We talked about sexual relationships and marriages and how that works. We talked about celibacy and how everybody doesn't have to be in a relationship. How everybody doesn't have to be in a relationship. And we talked about our relationship with God. And throughout the 5 days, we tackled these issues head on. Now we didn't. Now none of the teaching from the front necessarily came in terms of you should do this and you shouldn't do this. They were talking about the great themes and what God has planned for you. And I think that's something that I found really helpful. And I know that even further than our young people, it's something that it needs to get tackled head on in society. And what an amazing way to do it. It was done honestly. It was done out of a place of love, and it was done in a way that we couldn't have done it within our youth group, because coming from the front and coming from somebody else means that it's not in a personal situation. It's coming from a wider context, and that was amazing, and that affected a lot of our young people. So yeah.
Yeah. A lot of our young people as well, they're a bit too shy to admit it, but I just wrote a few things down, because when we're there, I like to take notes because the teaching is pretty amazing. And I just put something that basically we felt as a leadership team taking them, that we kind of struggled a little bit all week. We felt like that maybe we were not going as far as quickly as we have done in previous years, and we just really felt like it's a bit of a struggle to get the young people to sort of make a step, because you don't know what, just from an outward point of view, we could, but then we all got together and we had a bit of a prayer, and we were praying for these guys, and I just wrote the night after, wow, like God met with the young people amazingly. This one, I think it was like the last night or the second to last night, they'd done this amazing preach, like Chris was saying, about relationships, and like all of these it affects so many people. They'd all stood up for prayer ministry, like not just out, like the whole place was just like people bouncing up all over the place, and a lot of our guys got prayer ministry, and at one point I didn't even we were all worshipping, and I turned around and like there were people from our group, people like slain in the spirit, people in tears, people like it looked really messy, but it was amazing, and God just really met with them, and they all came out just like with this amazing godly glow about them. And one thing for us that Soul Survivor does is it really sort of launches them and propels them into their relationship with Jesus. I remember Katie last year, she just really got into the word. Like if you look at Katie's Bible, it must be the most read Bible in the history of the world. It's got so many post-it notes in it, and that is her new Bible. Like her old one is, and it just really launches them, and just I think inspires them to really keep on going for God. And then we're there to get to watch them and get alongside them and go with them wherever they're going. So that's pretty good.
So last thing that we really want to tell you about Soul Survivor Sunday was something that we did right at the start of Soul Survivor when we first started going to Soul Survivor with the long previous group that we had. We did a naming ceremony that we did, and I'd been to the SoulNet retreat, which happens in January, which is for youth leaders. And one of the guys there, called Rupert, he was all talking about character and how character builds, and actually character is something that we need to chase. And he talked about this practical exercise that he did, which was exactly the same thing that we did all of those years ago when we were naming characters out of people. So we did that this year, and we did that in a really positive way. There were no negative words. It sounds a little bit corny, but we all sat in a circle, and I think this is a good thing to do, not just for young people. I think this is a good thing to do in your home groups. This is a good thing to do in your prayer meetings. This is a good thing to do generally. And we sat down in a circle, and we had somebody that came into the centre. And for this, we dramatised it a little bit, and we called it a knighting ceremony. Laura had a big pink umbrella to knight people. But the principle is still the same, which was we call out godly character in people and call out the things that we can see in them that they might not be able to see in themselves, and give them some positive, encouraging words. And Laura managed to write all of them down. So I'm going to let Laura write out the names of the things that we actually ended up giving the young people.
I just want to say as well, when we mentioned about this, Ellie and Sam just turned to one another and were like, what was your name? We still refer to some of our young people that return as the names that we called them all those years ago. Ask Emmy what her original name was, and she will tell you that she's called Emmy the Kind. Emmy the Kind. I just said that. Emmy was called Emmy the Kind, and that must have been, well, how long did she say she'd been coming? About 7 years ago. And also, just Mike the Meek, because Mike, the guy who came last week with the big beard, he is not as timid. It's not timid, but he was just so quiet, and he just went about it and just helped people in such a way. And he was really meek and mild. Like, the way he went about it was just so gentle. And we'd got, like... What were y'all guys? What were you? Ellie the Extravagant, yeah. Amazing. I think that was probably down to the fact you didn't wear socks or shoes for the entire week. But, you know, the names kind of stick. So this year we had Pippa. You were not there when we did this, so we named you. And we said that you were full of endurance. Because it was a pretty difficult week for Pippa. Rebecca was determined. Matthew the Active. Matthew actually did a sponsored run while we were there, a 5K run. And I'm not joking when I say it was hot, like, it was ridiculously hot. And he was running around. We'd got Chloe the Adventurous. Chloe has got so much courage inside of her that nothing held her back. Off she went, and she just got in there and did everything. Courtney was really selfless. If there's anything doing, anything that needed doing, she did it. So Courtney was Courtney the selfless. Emmy was a comforter this time. She was kind, but we thought of comforter. She just really helped people and just really nurtured everyone. Tim was so loyal, he was really loyal to everyone. Really good friend to everyone. I can't find you. Hannah was colourful and creative. There was an art shed at Soul Survivor, and Hannah was there. She was just involved in some of the artwork, and we'd taken face paints with us, and she was constantly getting creative. At one point, I'd this big flower thing up my leg, because I'd sat in a chair, and she just decorated my leg. You can share those later. We'd taken Hannah, and she was big-hearted. She was huge-hearted. Chris. Now, I've put Chris and Chris. Chris was dedicated. Chris, the thing you need to know about Chris was, actually, we've shown you pictures of a camp. Chris did not stay on camp. Chris took his car and stayed in the car on the other side of the road to the rest of the camp. So Chris was really dedicated. He got up every morning and came back to camp when really he didn't need to. He could have snuck off in the night and we would never have known. So he was pretty dedicated to the whole thing. We've got... What have I done with Katie?
Katie, what was yours?
Katie? She was there? What was she? Katie the Kind-Hearted.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Katie the Kind-Hearted. She always has such a smile on her face as well, as you saw when she was sat in the paddling pool. And I got named Servant Heart. I think that's because I pretty much did everything while we were there. So it was awesome. And a really lovely way to end the week together, just to call out godly character. Chris was the carer. Chris literally took Pippa to hospital, and he was just there for everybody. This is a bit like everybody's big brother. He took a lot of stick as well while we were there, but that's good.
So, guys, can sit down. Thank you very much for coming to Soul Survivor, and thank you very much for sharing. So I'm just going to preach a little bit. It should be really short. We won't get worried too much about this. But I just want to start by reading 1 John 4, actually. I'm going to go 7 to 12, and then I'm going to go 19 to 21. Just miss out a little bit. It says, "My beloved friends, let us continue to love each other, since love comes from God. Everyone who is born of God and experiences a relationship with God. The person who refuses to love doesn't know the first thing about God, because God is love. So if you can't know him, you can't know him if you don't love. This is how God showed love for us. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. This is the kind of love we are talking about. Not that we once upon a time loved God, but that he loved us and he sent his Son as a sacrifice to clear out the way for our sins and the damage that we have done with our relationship with God. My dear, dear friends, if God loved us like this, we certainly ought to love each other. No one has seen God, ever. But if we love one another, God dwells deeply within us, and his love completes us, his perfect love. We, though, are going to love and be loved. First we were loved, now we love. He loved us first. If anyone boasts saying, I love God, and goes on hating his brother or sister, then think nothing of it. He's a liar. If he won't love the person he can see, how can God be part of that? The command that we have from Christ is blunt. Loving God includes loving people. You've got to love both. And as we mentioned earlier, the theme of Soul Survivor when we were there was all about relationships. It was all about, we talked about all the different types of relationship, friendships, marriages, and then sexual relationships in terms of marriages, celibacy, our relationships with God, and our relationships with others generally. We talked about the great themes of the Bible on the subject rather than specific teaching. None of it was there to try and condemn. It was all there to try and show you the great themes of the Bible, and actually that God has got something greater than what the world has got planned for you. Media and society have in general have a lot to say in the way that we form relationships. We see that selfishness is the ultimate form of a relationship. If I'm in a relationship with you, what am I going to get out of it? Am I going to get sexual gratification out of it? Am I going to get any form of gratification out of our relationship? Because selfishness is sin, and I is the part of sin. That's why we see I is at the heart of everything that 21st century society stands for. But throughout the Bible, we see that the ultimate expression of any type of love isn't sex, it's sacrifice. We have to give it away to gain it. This is what we've seen throughout the Bible. Jesus ultimately was the show of ultimate perfect love when he became the ultimate sacrifice. Now, on the first night that we were at Soul Survivor, Mike, who wears silly tops like Chris was wearing, he's going to hate me for that later. But Mike was talking about he was talking about this, and he was talking about relationships with God. Then he had the guts to bring out a children's book. And the children's book is The Velveteen Rabbit. I don't know if you've ever read The Velveteen Rabbit. I never read The Velveteen Rabbit before Mike started reading it. I tell you what, it's now my favourite book. So, fortunately, my big sister over here, she's a primary school teacher, and she does story time quite a lot. So we're just going to do story time for a little bit.
Okay, so this is The Velveteen Rabbit. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. So there was once a velveteen rabbit, and in the beginning he was really splendid. He was fat and bunchy as a rabbit should be. His coat was spotted brown and white. He had real thread whiskers, and his ears were lined with pink satin. On Christmas morning, he sat, wedged at the top of the boy's stocking, with a sprig of holly between his paws. The effect was charming. There were other things in the stocking, nuts and oranges and a toy engine, chocolate almonds, a clockwork mouse. But the rabbit was best of all. For at least 2 hours the boy loved him, and then aunts and uncles came to dinner, and there was a great rustling of tissue paper and unwrapping of parcels, and in the excitement of looking at all the new presents, the Velveteen Rabbit was forgotten. For a long time he lived in the toy cupboard or on the nursery floor, and no one thought very much about him. He was naturally shy, and being made only of velveteen, some of the more expensive toys quite snubbed him. The mechanical toys were very superior and looked down upon everyone else. They were full of modern ideas and pretended they were real. The model boat, who had lived through 2 seasons and lost most of his paint, caught the tone from them and never missed an opportunity of referring to his rigging in technical terms. The rabbit could not claim to be a model of anything, for he didn't even know that real rabbits existed. He thought they were all stuffed with sawdust like himself. And he understood that sawdust was quite out of date and should never be mentioned in modern circles. Even Timothy, the jointed wooden lion, who was made by the disabled soldiers and should have broader views, put on airs and pretended he was connected with the government. Between them all, the poor little rabbit was made to feel very insignificant and commonplace. And the only person who was kind to him at all was the skin horse. The skin horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath. And most of the hairs on his tail had been pulled out to string bead necklaces. He was wise, and he had seen a long succession of mechanical toys arrive to boast and swagger, then by and by breaking their main strings and passing away. And he knew that they were only toys. They would never turn into anything else. For nursery magic is very strange and wonderful, and only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced as the skin horse understand what it is all about. "What is real?" asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came in to tidy the room. "Does it mean having that buzz inside you and a stick-out handle?" "Real isn't how you're made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with you, but really loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" asked the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. "When you are real, you don't mind being hurt." "Does it happen all at once, like being wound up?" the rabbit asked, "or bit by bit?" "It doesn't happen all at once," said the skin horse. "You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been loved off, your eyes have dropped out, you get loose by the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand." "I suppose you're real," said the rabbit. Then he wished he had not said it, for he thought the skin horse might be very sensitive. But the skin horse only smiled. "The boy's uncle made me real," he said. "That was a great many years ago, but once you are real, you cannot become unreal again. It lasts for always."
Thank you. So that is Velveteen Rabbit. And what we see at the start of this book is that there's this rabbit toy that has been made and that it's absolutely perfect. It's brand new. Everything's great about it. And it gets put in this stocking, and it gets put right at the top of the stocking. So it's the first thing that you come and see. And I remember when I was a kid, and I remember coming down, and it's that first present that you get, which is always the most exciting, even if it's the most boring present that you ever get. It's usually socks for me, because that's the type of age that I am now. You get socks and you get smellies. So run downstairs, open up, and it's like, they're the best socks that I've ever seen. Like, that's what you feel like. And this kid, with the Velveteen Rabbit, he runs downstairs and he sees this Velveteen Rabbit at the top of his stockings and he goes, "This is the best toy that I've ever got." And 2 hours later, it's on the floor. Never getting played again. This is what happens in 21st century society in terms of our relationships. We act like we are perfect. We act like we are something that is worth having. I wanna look like I want to be your friend. I want to look like you're going to get something amazing from this relationship. But because we're not truth and we're not honest with that, we end up on the floor 2 hours later. Or however long later that we get, we end up on the floor, not getting played with, not having that relationship. Because that's the way that we form relationships at the moment. But what we see is that we move on with the story, and the rabbit doesn't. He understands that there's something more in this, and that everybody else is trying to put something on, and I'm just a little rabbit, and I've heard this thing about what's been real, and then he meets the skin horse, and the skin horse is extremely wise. He's been around a long time as a skin horse. Fortunately, he made of skin, therefore has got a bit of longevity in him, and then, like I think we all should do when we meet somebody that's wise, we ask them questions about life, and then the rabbit starts asking questions. His first question: what is real? Asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side. Does it mean that you buzz inside and that you have a stick-out handle? What is real? In 21st century society, how often do we think that means that you've got to buzz inside and that you've got to have a stick-out handle and that you've got to have absolutely everything and that it's got to be the best, because if it's the best, then I must be doing something right? The really wise skin horse says, real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. What an amazing thing that the skin horse says. That actually real is something that you become when you are loved. The amazing thing about the good news and about Jesus is that we are loved so that we can be made real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Skin horse. I think this can happen in church a lot of the times when people come in. Does it hurt? And we can be like, we've got to go with what 21st century. It's absolutely amazing. Your life will change, and we will not tell you that it's going to be really, really hard. But the skin horse doesn't do that. Sometimes, the skin horse said. But when you are real, you don't mind being hurt. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Trials and temptations come our way in every single day of our lives. But when you know that you are loved and when you are made truly real, then it doesn't matter because you already know what's going to happen in the future. The sting has gone out of being hurt because we know who really loves us. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up, or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, have sharp edges, who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose joints, and you get very shabby. But these things don't matter, because when you are real, you cannot be ugly. real doesn't happen all at once. Being a Christian doesn't happen all at once. Yes, we make an instant decision, and in that instant decision we invite Jesus into our heart, but it is a constant process getting to know Jesus. It is an absolute constant process. If you are not developing in your walk with God, then you are almost taking a step back. And the more that you get to know him, the more that you love him. And the more that you get to know him and the more that you love him, the more that you find your identity in him. And the more that you don't care that your fur has been loved off and that your eyes might be dropping out and that your joints might not work the same. Because you know what? And if I had the opportunity to say this to every single young person in the land, then I would do. Because when you are real, you cannot be ugly. Have you ever loved somebody, and when you love somebody, then whether that's a friendship, whether that's a relationship, whether that's a marriage, whatever form of relationship is, I guarantee that person is not ugly to you. Because you see past what is here, but you see straight into who they are. And this is exactly what Jesus does. And we find identity in things, and we think that we need to vibrate inside, and we need to have stick-out handles, and we need it to be it's all rainbows and glitter, and it's not. This is us. I'm the man that chews the inside of his cheek sometimes. Like, you don't do that unless you're flawed as a human being, do you? But I'm not ugly, because I know I'm not ugly, because God's got it. Corinthians 1:13. It gets used at weddings a lot. I don't know whether Sam and Ellie are having it their wedding. I don't know whether me and Lucy are having it our wedding. It gets used at weddings a lot. It's the love section of the Bible, 1 Corinthians. But you can change every single word that says love, because when I started reading and I looked at 1 John 4, it says, God is love. So feel free to change this when I read it to any of the loves to God, because God is all of these characteristics. Love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast, it is not proud, doesn't dishonor others, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, keeps no records of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. Always protects, trusts, hopes, and perseveres, because love never fails. Love never fails. We can always be made real with God, and that is 100% the best way to be. Amen.